and we don't have any witnesses. We only have a brief argument, and that is that those rules are set out to protect the troopers and to give them fair notice in anticipation of their interviews with internal affairs, and that the notice didn't have a date, and it referenced emails that could go back potentially 13 years in Sergeant Paxton's career. And for those reasons, we asked that it be rescinded on the fact that the notice was defective because it was insufficient.
Yes, good morning. We would just like to establish that Mr. Paxton did not suffer any adverse impact from the administrative notice that was issued to him. No testimony has been offered here today to establish that he suffered any adverse impact. And also, we would ask that this commission not rule that there was a violation in connection with the appeal of the rule notice, and that holds the commission would hold similarly to the Woodward decision, since this notice was issued prior to the commission's decision in that matter.
Now, you do agree there was no date in the letter?
Yes.
No date as to the emails that was...
No date was referenced to the notice.
If I may, there's a stipulation. Do the parties intend to introduce the exhibit, and is there a witness that you still plan to call?
I do not plan to call Sergeant Buckland because we do plan to stipulate to the administrative notice.
And you want to release Sergeant Buckland?
Sure.
He's here in the event the commission had any questions for him regarding any practices currently.
Unless one of the other commissioners does, we want to focus on the practice at the time of that letter.
Okay, so we can release Sergeant Buckland, and then the one stipulated document is the letter that you're going to introduce and bring up here?
Yes, I'll introduce it at this time.
Okay.
I guess I do have another question. I don't know if it's for your witness or if it's for you. So any explanation of how this letter was issued without a date referencing the...
I have to have Sergeant Buckland up here to answer that question.
If you can answer that question.
Yeah.
Sergeant Buckland, would you raise your hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but
Good morning, everybody. I believe your question was
How? I mean, the rule clearly requires that a date of the alleged incident be provided in the notice. You agree with me, right?
yes, sir, and I have no argument with that. Just for like historical practice, whenever we would draft letters in IA at the time, we would try to compile information into it that consists of whatever the allegation was, without getting too far into the details of everything, not necessarily specifically intentionally trying to withhold information, but just trying to relate whatever the allegation was to move forward. Whenever the first appeal of this nature kind of came about, we shifted that practice, revamped the rules, looked at everything, and started implementing the date and time of the factual allegation that was levied against the employee to try and better fit the actual notification letter practice.
Do you agree that Alvin Paxton had been employed with this agency for what, 13 years?
Yeah, I don't have any reason to say he wasn't.
Yeah. So, at least based on this letter, there's going to be emails in his first year of his employment.
I'm sorry, would you ask the question?
Based on what's contained in this letter, these could have been emails in his first year of employment that you were referred to.
Yeah, there's no time frame, so yes.
How could how could Trooper Paxton, was it Sergeant?
It is Sergeant.
Sergeant, I'm sorry. How could Sergeant Paxton know what to prepare for with this letter?
I mean, prior to his actual interview, I did reach out to him to schedule an interview with his wife, and I relayed that it was in relation to emails that were sent from him to his wife, which is why we interviewed her as a witness. As well as during his interview, I was able to provide him documented accounts.
How can he prepare for the interview?
prepared for the interview. He would have to go back and look through his emails and see what he had sent to anybody outside of the agency. Would be the only way that he'd probably be able to prepare, I guess.
Over the course of possibly 13 years.
Yes, as long as his career was, yes.
One question.
Yes, sir.
Did you know the dates of the emails that went out at the time that you were concerned about?
We knew the dates of some. This information stemmed from a previous administrative investigation. So we didn't know all the dates, and I don't know the dates off the top of my head right now, but in the course of another previous investigation, it was discovered that there were emails sent out to his wife, or at the time, technically, specifically, it was emails sent out to a wife which had, an email that had his wife's name. We didn't know factually whether or not he was sending it to his wife. It could have been his personal account, but we didn't know that at the time. It was just to I don't want to use his wife's name, but it was to his wife's name's email account. So we knew some of the dates, but we also did we technically did, I don't know, it was at least 2 other OTS searches for additional emails that were sent out. So we didn't know all of them at the time.
Commissioner Crawford.
So the emails that were sent out, they were sent out through the state police email system from
Yeah.
Sergeant Paxton?
Yes, sir. It was from his state-issued
Right.
departmental email, correct, through that system to an officer or personal
So-
private.
So when you send an email, if you yourself send an email out through the state police email system, is it dated?
Yes, and how it can come back from OTS, it'll come up, it'll create like a separate folder, and it'll show you, it'll look just like a sent box and outbox.
Right, I mean, just like my
format.
business, if I send an email out, there's usually a date and a time even.
Correct.
As to when the email was sent, and so that's why I'm a little perplexed as to, the emails have a date on them, they probably even have a time on them. You can probably tell if they've been opened or not,
Mhm.
even. I think, reading through the notes, I think
Yes,
there was
you-
some stipulation in there about, they could show that they had been opened, so just concerned about why, the information was readily available, why it wasn't put in the notice.
And the answer to that is that was just how I had done it for the longest time, at least on my time going into IA, up until recently when we made that change. So it wasn't anything, I would never say it was anything malicious towards anything. It was just, that was just how the practice was. You try to insert the information what we have at the time, without adding all the information, otherwise it would be you don't want to create a 3-page letter trying to notify somebody. But now the practice is we are adding the date, and I specifically make sure every time I send a letter, I want to see the date and time of the specific allegation levied against the person. And I try to repeat that as much as I can in the office now to kind of prevent this from happening again.
And what's your tenure with the state police, how?
5.5 years with state police, a little over 5.5 years with state police. Actually, I think almost exactly 3 years in internal affairs now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No dispute over the way the rule read at the time this letter was sent, right?
No, not at all. No.
So at that time, it required the date be provided to the trooper.
I mean, without reading it, I'm pretty sure it says the same exact thing of the date and time of the factual allegation has to be provided, so.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any questions from any of the parties?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Good.
I'm not entitled to that title, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, did the parties rest?
Yes,
We rest, Your Honor. Chairman.
we rest as well.
Okay, we'll go into, we have a motion to go into executive session
So
to
moved.
discuss the issues related to misconduct, allegations of misconduct. So moved. Second. Take a roll call vote.
Brian Crawford,
Yes.
Leonard Knapp,
Yes.
Harold Preet. Listen.
Yes. Okay, we ask everyone, including
Mr. Chairman, in the matter of Albert Paxton, I make a motion to grant the appeal and reverse the decision of the issue of the letter of reprimand in violation of Rule 12.13, which allows the commission to also proceed to Rule 1220 and reverse the penalty phase.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? The only thing I would add is, obviously, there's some testimony that we heard relative to the time period of Sergeant Paxton's career with state police. There's no indication whether that email or emails was during his first year, second year, or 13th year. And from that, I do believe that there would be prejudice from the lack of notice in this particular case. So I plan on voting in favor of the motion based on that.
Mr. Chairman, just for the audience's sake, 12.3 is very clear, even though it had been mentioned, had not been a practice previously. It's very clear in here that a trooper is under investigation, including the dates of the alleged offenses and the substance of the factual allegations being made against the trooper shall be provided. So,
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
we get a second.
Yeah, we got a second from Harold. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the ayes have it. The appeal is granted and the decision